Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Orange Coast Unitarian Universalist Church on Zoom. We respectfully recognize that our church property rests on Achaman and Tongva land. My name is Catherine Osborne, and I'm your worship associate this lovely morning. Our special guest, Matt Meyer, who I will fully introduce in just a bit, returns OCUC. Matt will be leading this whole service, the music and the sermon, so Beth Syverson, our Director of Music Ministries, is currently out on a break. Reverend Judy, our Director of Religious Education, already held classes for the children earlier this morning, and she'll offer one for our youth after the service. Our minister, Reverend Sean Wilshire, is not leading the service today, but she has a message for you.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're having an absolutely fabulous day. I know you're going to have an absolutely fabulous, wonderful service. So for those of you who may not know me, I'm Reverend Sean Wilshire, and I proudly serve this wonderful, beloved community. It really is fabulous. And that's what I encourage you to do. If you're new, you haven't quite gotten to know people, or you're just kind of coming in and lurking a little bit, that's okay. But what I really encourage you to do is get to know this community. And one of the best ways to do that is at the end of the service, we have these 20 minutes of breakout sessions to get to know people. And the nice thing is that everybody in there is in the same boat. It's random who gets put in there, so there's no real cliques going on or that sort of thing. That can happen sometimes, when we do in-person church, people get together with their friends, and that's totally cool and wonderful. But this way, you get to know new people and different people, which is just wonderful. And everybody's there. So, and this is a really friendly bunch. They are truly wonderful, loving, beautiful people, and I can't wait for you to get to know them. So I encourage you to do that. All right, without further ado, have an absolutely fabulous service.
And today, our special guest speaker is Matt Meyer. Matt Meyer is a lifelong Unitarian Universalist with a long background as a musician and worship leader for UU congregations. Matt lives in Boston, but travels as a traveling worship leader, bringing the good news of Unitarian Universalism to hundreds of congregations all over the country. He serves as the Director of Operations for Sanctuary Boston, a contemporary UU worship community with rock and music and engaging worship. Matt is also founder and organizer of the UU Song Leaders Convergence, a gathering for all UUs who love community singing to share skills, best practices, and of course songs, in order to build a more musical movement together. Matt's children's story, Desmond Gets Free, was just recently published by Skinner House Press. You can check out more info on his book and other ways to stay in touch with the link shared in the chat box below. And speaking of the chat box, I would like to invite you to open the chat box and, if you haven't already, say hello this morning. How the coffee is, how the weather is. I heard news that it might be a little warmer for us here. So stay cool, y'all. As Unitarian Universalists, we have many different beliefs, but we are one loving community. We are bound together, not by a common set of rules or beliefs, but rather a covenant. A covenant is simply a promise that whatever our beliefs, we accept one another and encourage each other in spiritual growth. We affirm that all life has inherent value and that all existence is interconnected. We strive for justice and compassion in our deeds and relationships, and we are committed to creating a welcoming community without regard to the traits that sometimes divide people. I'd like to extend a special welcome to visitors. If you're seeking a spiritual home, we really do hope that you'll find it here, even if just for today. After the service, we'll be placing everyone who remains in the Zoom breakout rooms for 20 minutes of coffee and conversation. Everyone is welcome to join in, and it's a great way to get to know people in the congregation. Our worship begins with the lighting of our chalice, the symbol of the Unitarian Universalist tradition. As we light it, we say our use and affirmation. If you have a chalice or a candle at home, we can light them together. Please join me now as we begin. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth and love, to help one another. This we affirm together. Thank you.
Our opening song this morning was written by Annie Zylstra when she was inspired in part by the words of Martin Prechtel, who spoke of what it was like to survive an earthquake in Guatemala. Prechtel spoke of what it was like to see the ground beneath his feet, that which had always been so permanent and so solid, suddenly rise up in motion. And he said, the myth of believing that the ground is solid is a myth believed by those that live on the earth rather than live as a part of the earth. I know for the last year now I have been constantly searching for some sense of grounding, even as it feels like the ground beneath my feet is constantly shifting. If that's been true for you, I invite you into the spirit of this song, to be in motion with the earth, to be in movement together. As for all of our music this morning, I invite you to sing along at home. Even though you're muted and we can't hear each other, doesn't mean that we can't sing together, doesn't mean we can't breathe together in rhythm. This song has a high part that's call and response and a low part, so sing whichever part works best for you. I believed in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, in the winds of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean all moves on in perfect motion. All is change and ever rolling ocean, all moves on. We'll do that low part 2 more times. Perfect motion, all is change and ever rolling ocean, all moves on in perfect motion, all is change and ever rolling ocean. I believed in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, in the waves of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believe in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, in the waves of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believe in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, in the waves of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believe in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, in the waves of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believe in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion, in the waves of steady change, and the ever-rolling ocean. I believed in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion. I wanted to share a story with you all, told to me by a friend of mine, Margie Klein, a rabbi. At the time, though, she was a young student activist working on immigration reform. It was in 2003, and Margie participated in a big campaign to raise awareness for immigration rights. It was called the Immigration Freedom Rides. And the plan was for buses of activists to start off in cities all over the country and each drive throughout the country, stopping in different places along the way until eventually all of the buses gathered together in Washington, D.C. for a big rally calling for immigration reform. On the buses, there were immigrants, both documented and undocumented. There were young activists, there was press, there was clergy, and there were even folks who still bore the scars from the original Freedom Rides back in the 60s. On every participant on every bus had a badge that they carried in case they were stopped by the authorities that said, "I have the right to remain silent," because they had publicized that there might be undocumented immigrants on the buses and were worried for their safety. Margie's bus passed the whole 2 weeks without ever being stopped. But there was a bus that started off in Los Angeles and was detained by immigration authorities in Arizona. An immigration official boarded the bus and wanted to figure out who might be undocumented. He saw a man who seemed to be a Mexican worker and he asked him for his identification, but instead the man just held up that badge that said, "I have the right to remain silent." So the immigration official decided to try a different strategy. He decided to try and talk with someone who was clearly a citizen, someone who would have nothing to lose by speaking with him and sharing some information, someone whose personal safety was not in jeopardy. And so he approached a middle-aged white woman, someone who he thought was almost certainly a citizen, and asked to speak with her. But she also held up that badge that said, "I have the right to remain silent." And then she began to sing, "We Shall Overcome." And when she began to sing, a Thai woman next to her began to join in, "We Shall Overcome." And then the whole bus broke out into song, "We Shall Overcome Someday." The authorities, frustrated by this new development, took everyone on the bus, all 50 people or so, and brought them to a nearby immigration detention center, a place where people had been known to disappear for weeks or months without word to their families. And while they were being held at this detention center, the authorities interrogated each person. And they did something that police often do with political prisoners in particular. They said, "You better tell us what's happened. You better tell us who is and isn't documented, because other people here have already given us the information we need. And you'll make it easier for yourself if you just talk with us." But they knew while they were there that that was a lie. They knew that the police were lying to them because for the whole time that they were in the detention center, they could hear the singing. For 4 hours, singing reverberated in the cells and down the hallways. And they knew that as long as people were singing, no one was talking. Eventually, after 4 hours of singing, after 4 hours of interrogation, everyone was sent back to the bus with no charges pressed. When Margie spoke of this, she said all of the other buses in all of the other places all across the country knew that their fellow activists, that their friends were being detained. And for the whole time that the detention was happening, for that 4 hours, all the other buses sang as well, in solidarity, in prayer. And she said that it reminded her of a moment from the Exodus story in the Hebrew Bible. There's a moment in the Exodus story called the Song at the Sea. It happens after the waters have been parted and the Israelites have passed through the Red Sea and they've arrived safely on the other side. And they throw this huge party, a sacred celebration, and they sing together, not because they've arrived at the promised land, In fact, they know that they are a long ways away, that they are just beginning to enter the wilderness. They know, in fact, that many of them will probably never see the promised land. But they celebrate the fact that they are making that journey, that they are on their way together in covenant with each other and with their God. We may not be able to even see the promised land that we've articulated in our principles, that we've envisioned in our hearts, a promised land of justice and equity and compassion. It is too far beyond the horizon, friends, but we can sing while we commit ourselves to the journey. May it be so. I invite you into a time of meditation. Let's breathe deeply for a moment. Breathe deeply and find a stillness that may have eluded us all week long. Breathe deeply and find some grounding and some connection, perhaps, in this adaptation of Psalm 97. Embedded in my heart, a melody beats, awaiting the conductor's call. I hear it now and again, but faintly. It disturbs my quest for power with hints of grace. It haunts my dreams of control with intimations of selflessness. It stays my hand lifted in anger and calms my heart when I am tight with rage. It whispers to me of justice and sings to me of compassion. It is the song of God, and I shall sing it yet, but not alone. We each bear the song, we each need the choir. Someday the song will rise in our mouths and we will sing together in harmony. Mountains of discord will melt before us. Idols of ego and tribe and boundary will give way as we weave a song of wonder, celebrating the many and the one. Light is sown for the righteous, joy for those who embrace it, and song is a chariot to both. Together we will sing the world awake. Amen, and may it be so. Our journeying song is Ozi Vizimratya, Vaeli Lishua. This text comes from the song At the Sea, a sacred part of the Hebrew Bible where the words, unlike any other part of the text, are written in two columns to symbolize the two walls of water that parted to separate and create that path to freedom. Ozi Vizimratya, Vaeli Lishua. My strength balanced with the song of God will be my salvation, it says. I invite you to sing along again. If the words are tricky, just hum along or make up your own. The song at the sea must have been the most incredible party. The Israelites have made it to safety. The Red Sea has swallowed up their enemies behind them, and their God has liberated them from generations of slavery. Can you even imagine what a celebration it must have been? Certainly better than any New Year's party I have ever been to, I'm sure of it. And you have to imagine that even before that, the actual passing through the Red Sea must have been incredible. The waters have parted, leaving them this magnificent passageway to freedom. And if you're like me, you have a pretty clear image of how it all happened. As Charlton Heston raises his staff and the mighty wind comes and parts the way. There is another story, though, of how it happened that I want to share with you. A story that comes through the Jewish oral tradition, the Midrash tradition of storytelling. This alternative version says that when Moses and his people were trapped between the sea in front of them and the Egyptian army behind them, the people had begun yelling at Moses, asking why he had led them out of the safety of slavery in Egypt. Moses, who already has been through a lot at this point, does probably what any of us would do. He turns to God and he says, "You got us into this mess. What now?" But God rebukes Moses and tells him to stop complaining and turn around and just keep walking. Moses looks at the sea in front of him and he is paralyzed with fear. He doesn't move. So another person, a man named Nachshon, a leader of his own small tribe, begins to wade into the water. Now Nachshon steps into the water, thinking that when he takes that one step of faith, the waters will part the way to safety. But it doesn't happen. So he keeps walking. He gets in the water up to his waist, soaking wet, expecting that any moment now, God is surely about to clear the way, but nothing. When he is up to his neck, he is sure any moment now God is going to do something, but nothing happens. It's only, we're told, when the sea is up to his nostrils and he is gasping for air, that God clears the way before him. In this story, God wanted to free the Israelites, but first they had to do their part. Liberation didn't come because they sat back in comfort and asked politely. If you have ever worked to reform our government or any major institution for that matter, the story of Nachshon may feel familiar to you. He was in almost over his head before the way began to clear. Why would Nachshon do such a thing? What gives a person such solid faith in the path before them? Sometimes when I hear stories like this, I try and ask myself who I would have been if I was there, what character I would have played in this drama. To be honest, I'm no Nachshon. I probably wouldn't have been Pharaoh or Moses or any main character either. I would like to think that of the passerby, the bystanders watching Nachshon walk into the sea, I would have at least been one of the supportive ones, though. You keep up that good work, Nachshon. I'm right behind you as soon as it's dry. You just let me know if you need me to sign a petition. I'm on it. What gives a person such faith in the path before them? Shane Claiborne, a Christian activist, talks about doing justice work even when the work is heartbreakingly slow and complicated, even when the path before us is unclear. And he says, some of us have just caught a glimpse of the promised land. And it is so dazzling that our eyes are forever fixed on it, never to look back at the ways of the old empire again. I imagine that Nachshon had seen somewhere in his heart a dazzling glimpse of the promised land, that he saw where he and his people were at, trapped between an army behind them and a sea in front of them, headed through some very troubled water, but on to freedom. The path from here to there was clear, and no sea was going to stop him from walking it. Friends, we have been in some troubled water in this country for a long time. Systemic racism and white supremacy have been built into the foundations of our country, and they have been flaring up in the headlines, flaring up in the news, and flaring up in our communities. I've been thinking back to one of the first real discussions that I ever participated in about racism, which was at an identity group for young white people at a UU annual meeting years ago. I remember sitting in this oversized room in a convention center, a dozen white college and high school students sitting on the ground in a circle. And someone said these words that just hit me. They said, racism is the name of a system that pushes down one group of people. But the other half of that system is a process of lifting up another group with unearned advantages, white folks. Now, I've gone on to learn more since then about what that lifting up and pushing down looks like in real life. But that first sentence articulated what for me had been the missing half of the story on race. Basically, anytime anyone in my life had ever talked about racism, it was defined as a problem of people of color, not as a white people's problem. Even though white folks were the ones that created it and benefited from it and had more resources by definition to address it. This other half of the story for the first time included me and my place in things. And I started to look back on my life and see for the first time what had been these invisible forces that, kind of like gravity, shaped the world around me and pushed me in a certain direction. There was the time the police let me go with a warning, the first good-paying job I ever got through a family friend, anyone who ever said I looked like a natural leader, the private school I went to. There was the other time the police let me go with a warning, the honors classes I took that were largely segregated in my public school, strangers who have naturally trusted me when I needed help, my own trust in the government to be on my side as the default. And last but not least, there was the other time the police let me go with a warning. Perhaps I'll save those stories for a different sermon, though. Coming to look honestly at this old empire, at my place in this old empire of ours, has felt at times like wading into the water over my head. How uncomfortable it has been to realize that despite my best intentions and despite my really good values, I am sometimes in the place of the Israelites fleeing the Egyptians, but that I am also at the same time in the place of the Egyptians. Most of the Egyptians weren't bad people, you know. They were born into an unjust system, born into a system where exploitation of the most vulnerable was built into the structures of their economy. I get that. The sneaky thing about unearned advantage as a white person is that I didn't ask for it. I didn't have to. It's been like finding some extra money folded up in my back pocket when I do the laundry. We have schools funded locally by segregated property taxes, extra money in my back pocket. We have a segregated housing market concentrating wealth in white neighborhoods. It's extra money in my back pocket. When my parents or grandparents have accumulated wealth at a time of systematic racial segregation, accumulated wealth in jobs and neighborhoods that was by law closed off to people of color, I can inherit that wealth and I can get that segregation money because we have a racist tax code that allows for it. The transfer of inequality from one generation to the next indefinitely. Money in my back pocket. But walking intentionally into uncomfortable conversations about race, going into that discomfort, sometimes up to my nostrils, has given me, if not a glimpse of the promised land, at least a vision of the way toward it. Once the Israelites were out in the desert and the way forward looked difficult, we were told that some asked Moses to take them back to the more comfortable land of Egypt and back to slavery, rather than trust that they could cross the sea. I get that. Our country is in some very troubled water. And it's important to remember that no one election is going to bring us to the promised land of justice and equity and compassion. We will be in the wilderness for some time to come. Any promised land of true justice is way beyond the horizon that we can see today. We have a public school system that fast-tracks some to college and others to jail, and it's troubled water. We have a country that has paid reparations to slave owners for liberating their so-called property, but refuses to even discuss reparations to the children of the enslaved, and it's troubled water. A country that continues to separate families, particularly families of color, at the border and in detention centers around in the country, and through an enormous system of mass incarceration designed to separate people from their families and devastate communities. It is troubled water that we need to wade through. Wading through those troubled waters of injustice can bring us to the other side where we can realize the promised land of justice. I don't know if there is a God out there somewhere who has specific opinions on how we bring change to the material world. My experience tells me that God or no God, some plans work better than others. Sitting back in comfort and asking nicely for change tends not to work. It's rare to find a story of true transformation without some very troubled water, without someone moving forward into the depths, holding fast to a vision of the promised land, a dazzling glimpse of justice. I can't say, friends, for sure which character in the Exodus story I would have been. But I can say that I have known some modern-day Nachshons, and I am planning to try my best to follow them into the water. The policy platform for the Movement for Black Lives says it is time to forge a new covenant. And so let us forge that covenant together, reaching out beyond the borders and the barriers that have limited us in the past, building stronger communities where we take care of each other in meaningful ways, building the beloved community within and beyond our congregations, reaching out to the marginalized among us, partnering together in solidarity. We have all different kinds of roles to play in building a world of justice and equity and compassion. But liberation for everyone means everyone doing our role, playing our part. And so I invite you to join me in wading into the troubled waters of discomfort, of conversation, and of action. I invite you to turn your back on this old empire of ours and join me in recommitting to a Unitarian Universalism that speaks of a promised land in the here and the now and walks steadily into the water to get there together. May it be so, and may we make it so. Our returning song is called More Waters Rising, written by Sarah Lynch Thomason, a climate justice activist in Appalachia. This song, like the best music, and I would say like the best faith communities, calls us not to turn away from the crises of our time, not to ignore the difficult things, but to face them together, to name them honestly, and to move forward to address them together. I invite you to sing along. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. There are more fires burning, they will find their way to me. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. There are more mountains falling, this I know. This I know. There are more mountains falling, this I know. There are more mountains falling, they will find their way to me. There are more mountains falling, this I know. This I know. There are more mountains falling, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know. This I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know. I will wade through the waters when they find their way to me. I will wade through the waters, this I know. This I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know. I will walk through the fire, this I know. This I know. I will walk through the fires, this I know. I will walk through the fires when they find their way to me. I will walk through the fires, this I know. This I know. I will walk through the fires, this I know. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know. This I know. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know. I will rebuild the mountains when they find their way to me. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know. This I know. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. This I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. There are more waters rising, this I know. This I know. There are more waters rising, this I know.
Unitarian Universalist congregations are fully self-supporting, meaning that members and friends raise all funds for the operating budget, ministries, and programs of the church. We're ever grateful for your gifts of time, treasure, and talent. OCUC amplifies its spirit of generosity by sharing one half the plate we receive from an organization that shares our values. This month, we are supporting the Unitarian Universalist Justice Ministry of California. It was founded in 2002 to lift up the prophetic voice of Unitarian Universalism and UUs at the state capitol in legislative and policy decisions. Over the years, UUJMCA has advanced justice in our state by cultivating and connecting leaders and communities, and empowering the public voice of those who share UU values and principles. Let us support and nurture and start our own journey to a better land of justice. And on that, there are now multiple ways in which you could support the church and this organization. You can mail a check, you could go through our website, use an app called Give Plus, or by texting. The choice is all yours. All information is on our website should you need it. As always, thank you for your generosity.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around the tendies fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change and life from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the world. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around the tendies fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the world. It is time now. And what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around the tendies fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves back to the world. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle around the tendies fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves back to the world. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. Great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
All right. So it's the pledge drive, folks. So as you probably know, our seasonal pledge is very important to our community. It helps build and support our budget for the church. So get your pledges in. And today we have another fun video for you all to watch all about it. I hope you'll enjoy. Please join in singing We Gather Together, a song that puts our intentions into words, expresses our gratitude for the many gifts we share.
We gather together, we gather as one, for peace, love, and justice for everyone. We give from our hearts to show that we care.
Now is a time when we honor the important events in our lives. You are invited, one and all, whether you're a member, a friend, or a visitor, to participate in our weekly ritual of joys and sorrows. Perhaps you come here today holding something close to your heart, moments from the last days or hours that struck you at your core. If you'd like to honor such a profound joy or sorrow, you are invited to do so. You can do this by lighting a candle at home. It's a wonderful way to honor what you hold in your heart. However, if you would like to share your joy or sorrow with the congregation, you can write it in the chat. Let us take a few moments in contemplation, and then I will begin reading the joys and sorrows out loud. Please forgive me if I miss a joy or sorrow. You can help me out not miss any by waiting to type moments or comments to express joy or sorrow until we are finished. For Candle Hope, for Virginia D, Bob M is having surgery tomorrow. Please send in positive thoughts. Thanks from Deanie. We'll keep him in our thoughts. From Barbara S, now that my mom, sister, and I have been vaccinated, I get to visit them tomorrow. That's amazing. And from Sandy and Dawn, there's a candle of thanks. And from Sarah J, a candle of joy. Now that we're able to find vaccinations for my son and daughter and my sister at Cal State Long Beach. That's awesome, guys. Get those vaccinations. That's wonderful. Oh, and from Sandy and Dawn, thanks D'Angelo and Sabina for the stop motion video. That was so cute. It's wonderful. From Fancy C, a candle of joy. Kudos to Dave Hardenbrook for his latest video project. Check for his demo on his Facebook page. He asked for input too. Go Dave! Continued success to you. And a candle of sorrow from Sarah J. Sorrow for my grandpa Kitty Waffles died yesterday. So sad. I'm so sorry. Losing a pet is really hard. We'll keep you in our thoughts. For Margaret P, my husband Richard is successfully recovering from cataract surgery. He sees better already. That's wonderful. From Sarah H, so glad Sarah J is back in the office. May she continue to recover and be happy. Let us hold and love all the joys and celebrations and all the hurts and sadness, both spoken and silent. Let our joys remind us to be thankful, our concerns remind us to hope, and our sorrows remind us to connect. Let all these moments remind us that we are not alone. Thank you. Let us join together, extinguish the flame of our chalice, and say together, extinguish our chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These we care in our hearts until we're together again. Thank you for joining us this morning. We are a congregation made of people who all believe differently. And yet when we gather together, we make up one loving community. We need not think alike to love alike. If you're a guest, a visitor, or someone who hasn't yet been known to us, I invite you to become a part of this beloved community. We encourage you to write in the chat your name and where you're from so we can welcome you. If you'd like to know about our church, including programming for children and youth, please contact us at hello@ocuuc.org, and we'll help you get connected. In addition, we invite you to sign up for our weekly email called The Blast at blast@ocuuc.org. We want everyone to feel a part of this beloved community, so please reach out and we'll help you get connected. After the benediction, we will have a short period where everyone can wave and say hello, and that those who remain we put into Zoom breakout rooms for 20 minutes if you so choose. We invite you to check in and get to know people in your group and welcome any visitors. And now for announcements of the week. So let's see what we have today. So for today, we have nonfiction book group at 12:30 p.m. and an all-church event on, let's see, the Friday on the 23rd to 24th, Saturday 24th is a Unitarian Universalist Men's Fellowship. And some cool groups and weekly email meetings that we have, go check out. We have a mindfulness workshop on Monday, the 19th. We have choir rehearsal, our wonderful choir. We have a fun social hour on the 23rd, and as well as a rainbow movie night for The Bible Tells Me So on Saturday, 24th. I advise you to check all these out. These are wonderful things that we have going on, so thank you. And now, Matt has his benediction.
Someday the song will rise in our mouths and we will sing together in harmony. Beloveds, may we go singing, even when the promised land is well beyond any horizon we can see. May we go singing at the sea, even when the water is troubled. May we go singing, turning our backs on this old empire and journeying together toward that dazzling promised land of justice and equity and compassion we've envisioned in our hearts and articulated in our principles. Together we will sing the world awake. Go in peace, go in love, and go and be blessed as you are a blessing to others. And I invite you to join together in singing our music for dispersing.
Be safe, be well, you mean the world to me. Be safe, be well, you mean the world to me. Be safe, be well, you mean the world to me. Be safe, be well, you mean the world to me.
This service is over. Let our service continue.